Good evening, everybody. Happy Mentor Monday here at SC Codes. How are y'all doing? Hope everybody is well. It's good to have you here with us tonight. I know we've got a couple of first-timers, so hi, everybody. My name is Leah King, and I run Build Carolina, which is a nonprofit based here in South Carolina, and we help run the SC Codes program. Tonight, we have yet another awesome SC Codes mentor who is coming to you live from Florence, South Carolina. We've got Patrick Abernathy, who works with ACS Technologies, and he's going to share a little bit about his story. As always, you guys get those questions ready. We are mostly here to share great stories, but also to take your questions. So without further ado, let me grab Patrick here and we will get started. All right. Can everybody hear us? Patrick is here. Patrick, can you kind of start by maybe taking us through who you are and what you do, kind of what your work life looks like, and then we'd love to also hear the backstory. How did you kind of find yourself in the world of programming?
Yeah, hey, my name's Patrick Abernathy. I'm a senior software engineer, I think it's a fancy title they give us nowadays, with ACS Technologies. Right now, I'm in IT, and my main focus currently is actually we're slowly migrating a whole bunch of our stuff off the over to, everybody's heard cloud computing. So we're doing all the cloud services and cloud computing. That's really been my focus for the past couple of years. We have another team that's dedicated to most of our internal stuff, but my primary focus has all been cloud computing and writing stuff all up in there. It's been really exciting. Day to day, I mean, you never ask a programmer what he does day to day. We sit at a computer, type, look at lots of code. It's not terribly exciting. But the things that we build, you know, when you finally get everything out there and the things that the toys you get to play with are actually really exciting. So the day to day never sounds exciting. My wife has a tendency to glaze over anytime I say anything about what I did today. But
and tell us a little bit about. I was just going to ask. Tell us a little bit about ACS Technologies and kind of what the company does.
Okay, ACS Technologies is a church and nonprofit software company. So we write all the applications for churches, you know, for attendance and small groups and contributions and payroll. So there's all this stuff, things that churches do, and then a lot more things that churches do that most people don't understand that they do, because, you know, they have all the business side that they still have to do. So we were actually ranked in one of those fancy newspapers, one of the number one company for church management software. We have the number one product right now in the United States and going into Canada too.
So amazing.
So we've been doing some really good things, and it's a really good company to work for. So
that is awesome. Well, take us back a little bit, if you don't mind, starting with kind of what you thought you would be doing when you either got out of high school or kind of started your educational path, and what did that look like, and how did you end up finding yourself here at ACS?
Well, that started actually a long time ago. I actually got started in programming when I was 14. So I started C++. I'm one of those weird kids that my dad brought home a computer, and I never stopped playing with it since. So really since about, I think he brought it home when I was 11. It was an old IBM 286. And so I taught myself DOS and started playing around with that, and just was infatuated with the technology and really never left it. So, you know, I kept up with it. I took some college level courses in high school just because our high school didn't offer. I went to a really small high school, so just to get into programming. So I did C++ for 2 semesters at a local technical college, and then kept up with it through high school. I went to Francis Marion, got a degree in computer science and mathematics. So pretty much right out of the gate knew that's what I was going with. So there was no question. It did take a little bit to get started out of college because no matter what they tell you, that first job is always a little hard sometimes. And I didn't know anybody down here, so worked with insurance company Assurant. I think was my first job working in their computers, and kind of, you just work your way up. You get your resume and work for a small contract company down here called TDS, which is a really great company to work for, and then ended up at ACS.
And you've been there how long now?
I just hit 11 years at ACS.
That's awesome. We already have a question from Scott. Hi, Scott. It's good to have you back this week. Scott is asking, what language is the church software written in? Can you touch on that?
Oh, man, that's a doozy. So our big program, you can go online, I think, onrealm.org, I think is the main website. Don't hold me to that. I actually don't work. It's our R&D project. I don't work on it, so I'm trying to do it from memory. Let's see, it started off C#. So anybody, it's the evolution of C++, the new things, C#. It's a Microsoft language. And then from there, so any web product, you're going to have a back end of some server code. So in Realm started off C#. Everybody, you got your HTML, your JavaScript, all the stuff for your front end that pretty much every language that has a website will use. And then actually we're moving it towards using Google's language called Go. So a lot of the back end's now evolving into Go, which is a really cool language. I'm actually rather partial to it myself. So.
Yeah, I've heard good stuff. So what kind of dictated that change? And how often have you seen those kinds of almost like language to language changes happen in your career?
Well, when I first started, we actually upgraded languages. So you'll see that a lot. You'll see older programs being upgraded. So when I started, we did VB6 into VB.NET. So you'll see that actually, I'm not going to say too often because they're still looking for COBOL programmers apparently. So you will see a lot of times the versions will upgrade. But as technology has come around, when Realm came out, we hosted online. Everything was hosted on our facilities, and obviously we would have a disaster recovery site maybe that we bought a computer to store somewhere else to house all that. But as cloud computing came around, we realized things like using Linux and using a whole lot of other technologies. Not only does it keep your costs down, but it keeps your overhead down. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but C# is actually a bit of a bloated language, so it just requires more RAM, more processing power to run. So use something like Go that's a lot more streamlined. You can do the same amount of work on a smaller computer. And when you go into the cloud environment, it's all about figuring out exactly what you need, because if you want to spend $600 on a server, you can do that. But if you can do the same amount of work on a $20 server, well, you're probably going to buy the $20 server. So, right. And we're only talking one server, but something might be running on 20 servers. So right. That's $600 versus $20 add up quickly. So things have just evolved. The architecture's changed. We've actually had to halt development on the project and actually rekeyed in back end in certain ways, because as technology evolves, especially on these long running projects, sometimes you just got to halt and redo some stuff. So yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the kind of common questions that I've gotten in the last couple of years is sort of this, like, which language do I start with if I'm new to development, if I'm interested in just getting started? And the answer to that really varies, I think based on kind of, what are your goals? What is it that you're trying to kind of get out of your education? And ultimately, it seems like we land often into this place of it's way more about learning how to learn and learning how to teach yourself, because so many things so many languages evolve, so many technologies evolve and change. How would you answer that question, Patrick?
Yeah, like you said, that's always a tough one. I actually usually suggest a lot of people start with something like C Sharp. It's run by Microsoft. They have all the tools out there for free. You can actually go and download Visual Studio. You can go out there and download SQL Server. I mean, they give you a lot of powerful tools really cheap. But like I said, C Sharp is to me, a good starter language, and C Sharp can do just about anything. Not just use C Sharp, but we'll generalize that into the .NET because you have C Sharp and VB and all these others that actually fall under that .NET. I like what Microsoft's done with that. And enough people use it that you can Google a question and get an answer back within 2 or 3 results. And really what you're doing when you're starting is you're learning how to think like a programmer. It's not so much the language, because you should be able to take one language and, the syntax might change, but the theory behind how the code works will not change, regardless of the language that you move to. So C Sharp for me is always a good one. Everybody loves their first Hello World program. So the tools are out there, the documentation's out there. And as with everything, depending on how far down the road, everything gets complicated eventually. But to me, I find that one to be a really easy language because it does hold your hand. It's a framework that's been around so long that it really holds your hand to a lot of it.
So you are a professional software engineer who lives in Florence, South Carolina, which might be surprising to some that there are companies in places like Florence that have teams of people who are building technologies that are used around the world every day, which is pretty exciting and pretty cool. So when you kind of came on as an SE Codes mentor, and for a little background, for those of you who are with us, Patrick has been to a couple of our in-person meetups at the Florence County Public Library, but we've, of course, had to stop all of our in-person meetings everywhere around the state, which, while that's a bummer, it's nice to be able to see our mentors here. But so I know you haven't gotten to meet too many people yet, Patrick, or, chat with too many students, but I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on, for people who might not live in our major metropolitan areas in South Carolina, and who may not have had, like you, may not have had those opportunities in high school to learn to code. What advice do you have for people who are exploring this as a possible pathway? And would love to kind of hear how you talk to new developers.
Oof, you keep giving me loaded questions. The first thing I would ever say to any new developer is you got to want to develop. I mean, this isn't a profession you spend 30 minutes on it and suddenly you know everything. I mean, every day some new gadget, new phone, new something comes out. And programmers have to evolve with everything else. So you got to challenge yourself to, stick with it. You're not going to learn everything today. But I mean, there are great communities out there online. One of the big ones, Stack Overflow. If you've ever had any sort of question on any sort of language, I mean, their whole community is built for asking questions. SE Codes. I mean, I've tried to stay pretty active on the Slack channel. But you have to stay involved if you want to be a programmer. I mean, it's especially learning. It's like ask questions. Go out there, do your research, but don't get discouraged.
Right.
I mean, programming can be frustrating. I mean, I've been doing this longer than I need to admit, but I mean, like today, I banged my head on something for 2 hours because I had a typo that I missed.
Still happens after this long.
So, or something didn't work the way that I intended it. Programmers are famous for saying it works for me, and then it must be your problem. So,
yeah.
I had one computer it ran on, the other computer it didn't. And, for 2 hours, I had to figure out. I mean, there's always something new to learn. You don't know all the answers. If you know all the answers, then I don't know. you need to move on and do something else.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think
one
that's,
thing I've always told everybody is try to learn something new at least on a daily, at least a weekly basis.
yes,
So.
that's such good advice. And I think that's a really good reminder too of just, why even SC codes exists. It's like you said, programming can be frustrating and it can be isolating at times, especially if you're kind of learning on your own. And so we think, a big part of succeeding especially as you're trying to get into programming, is connecting with people who are doing this, who, live and work in either kind of similarly to you or in your same area. And for us, even just reminding people that people are doing this work right down the street from you, everywhere around our state is kind of nice to know. So I think that's really good advice and a great reminder too to use those resources. Like for us with SC Codes, Slack, as you mentioned, is a great resource where in between, these conversations, if you're a person who has a question about anything around programming, and you're part of that SC Codes community, you can go onto Slack at any point and ask that question, and one of our mentors will be there and be able to answer that question. So it's nice to have kind of that immediate response with, real people who are really doing this in our communities, which is nice.
Yeah, and I think all of us on the Slack channel are wanting to help. So
Yeah.
Sometimes those things get pretty quiet, but you're working, ask some questions,
That's right. And speaking of questions, and my dog apparently has a question. For those of you who are watching, let us know kind of what it is that you are learning right now, or maybe where you are in your learning to code journey. We'd love to help answer any questions that you may have. So don't forget to throw those into the chat tool right here, the comments, and we will address those. Keep those comments coming. We love to hear from you guys. And Patrick is here to answer these questions from y'all. So take advantage of the next few minutes and ask those. And as those come in, Patrick, would you talk a little bit about in your work at ACS, so your fancy title is Senior Software Engineer for IT. What are some of the other kind of roles that are included at your company, whether that's strictly kind of programming roles or some of the other roles? What all does it take to put together these products that you guys are working on?
Oh man, let's see. So the department I work for is IT. My subsection for that is the developers. So we're responsible for a lot of the automation and stuff that we call it the corp systems team. So all the corporate systems. So a lot of our billing and stuff. IT doesn't make doesn't make any products that we actually sell to the public. Everything is for getting our internal. But at the same time, you want to go out and someone wants to buy Realm. Well, they have to set all their stuff up, and we set up the automation piece to make you a customer. So it's just because you sign up for Realm, a lot of people don't understand that you got to sign up for Realm, but then we got to put you in our client database. We got to set up internal billing, because unfortunately software is not free, and all the other stuff behind the scenes. But on top of that, Realm, we've got a whole we call them the SREs. Some people also call them the DevOps team, which are all about your SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineers. They're the ones that make sure the servers that Realm is running on are efficient. They're still running all the technology back there. They don't actually write the code. They're responsible for the servers. And a lot of people would think something like a system admin would do that. We have some involvement, but now that since we're shifting so much to cloud, someone like Amazon handles the servers. We don't have to do that anymore. So that actually frees our system admins up and our database admins to handle our corporate side technology stuff, because we still do host a bunch of stuff in-house. So, and then we have an entire R&D floor, 80 some odd developers working on Realm. I mean, we literally have that many people churning this project out. So
Wow.
there's 150 people just to get the technology going on this product. And then you got another 150 support staff to help you out if you have a question. So
Amazing. It's a pretty big company. And how many of you are in Florence and how many of you are in other places?
Trying to remember, last I saw it was about 350 in Florence. That includes our main accounting, our leadership team is down here. All of IT is in Florence. R&D is spread out between Florence, which is, I'd say, probably 80% of our developers are in Florence. We have an office right down the hall from you, apparently, in Greenville.
Yeah, up in Greenville, yeah. A few developers up there as well.
And we have a couple in Phoenix. And we used to have some in Seattle, but I think we only have a handful of them. They've moved on to other things.
Yeah.
So
All
and
right.
then all of our support is here with maybe like 2 in Phoenix, because one of our projects actually is headed out of Phoenix. So
Awesome. Got a couple of questions coming in now for you, Patrick. One about DevOps and how someone might get into DevOps without having already been in that role, asking kind of how do you prove that you have the knowledge to get into DevOps?
You'll have to forgive me. I haven't dug too much into the DevOps world. But your big things are, you're going to have to understand the technology. DevOps is all about, for me at least, and then will find DevOps teams internally, but they kind of work the same, but you have to understand, they have to have a better knowledge of the infrastructure. So you need a little bit more system administrator knowledge. You won't find many DevOps have a ton of programming experience. Some of the programmers but you basically get a blend of developers and system admin. So you kind of become I'm sorry I'm babbling because I don't really know 100% right answer on this, but it's kind of a blending of the two, and their main focus would be make sure things, like I said, run efficiently. They're going to be there to keep costs down, to keep uptime up. If a server goes down, it's the DevOps fault pretty much, especially if you're in a cloud team like they are, our SREs. The reason that we call them SREs is we had a DevOps team that nobody really liked, so now we call them SREs. So they didn't want to get stuck with that stigma. So they're kind of the same thing. But it is you have to get into it and kind of understand a little bit of programming, because you got to know how your software is going to work there. At least high level, I wouldn't say you have to dig too much into it, but you got to really understand that back-end technology and how it works and how it works efficiently. And our DevOps, our SREs, have to understand the technology behind our applications themselves. So, you got all the Redis caches and a whole bunch of other things that actually have to run in the back end just for the website to turn on. So,
yeah, that's good stuff to know.
That's smattering of everything. I don't have 100% good answer for you on that. There are plenty of articles out there. There's a book someone tried to pawn off to me, and I'm not a big technical book guy. I think it was just called like the DevOps mentality or something. It's kind of a shift that you have to make that lines more towards efficiency than, just throwing things at it.
Yeah. That's good to know. All right, Darren, congratulations for finishing your first semester at Trident Tech. He says that he took the first 2 Java classes, so now he basically understands that difference between front end and back end, which is good. Good start, Darren. Pretty soon you'll be an SE Codes mentor. Couple other questions. So Scott has a couple of questions asking, what can you do to avoid the catch-22 problem where hardware folks are saying it's a software problem and software folks are saying it's a hardware problem? And Scott, let me know if I asked that right, but thoughts on that?
I always say prove them wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, say from a programmer's perspective, a lot of times you do run into this issue is it's a hardware problem, but the system admin will always throw down his flag and say, well, I'm not going to look at it until you prove it, basically. not the best mentality, but we do face that a lot. So best thing to do whenever you're writing some software and you need to prove it's a hardware problem, logging is your friend. I mean, it's something I actually recently just put in a website that I have is we're actually running into a hardware problem. I have a server that's just not powerful enough, but everybody's like, well, because it would cost another $100 to upgrade the server. So, and this is an Amazon, so $100 a month to go to the next big server. So I had to prove it. So you have to put it in there. It's like, why are things timing out? I had to put all this logging, catch all your exceptions. So essentially, the burden of proof is on the developer to prove that's the hardware stopping us. And it's not even we find out it's not the hardware or the software. Unfortunately, and I'm not going to throw, I guess I should stop, but the curveball is a lot of times there's some middle pieces in there too. So logging. So that's going to be your friend in the long run.
Yeah. Scott had a kind of follow-up question to, should a programmer have a good working knowledge of the hardware also?
I would actually say yes. And that's helped me. But like I said, a couple of years ago, I got into cloud computing, and I've always wanted to get into networking. And I am I've even asked to go work as a sysadmin for a couple of months to see if we could do that trade-off. But I got more into the AWS and the cloud world, and IT formed a team. So I'm the lead, basically the tech lead developer. We got a tech lead sysadmin, and we got one monitoring guy and an infrastructure guy. And so it's really helped us that since the four of us are kind of watching our cloud computing, that I've been able to work with them and actually learn all this stuff. Because a lot of times I'm finding it's like, you'll find this on-prem or in Amazon, you go to your sysadmin and say, hey, I need this. And he's like, okay, it's there. But it doesn't make sense. And if something breaks down, you don't know why. I mean, I can write code all day long, but you have to put it on a server. And if you understand what that server's doing and how that server's connected, it'll just make your life easier. I mean, you always have a sysadmin to help you through it. At least I would really hope. But there are contract people that have to know it all. So God bless them. But if you get the chance, get into it a little bit, at least understand some of the stuff. I mean, it's still hardware for me, especially when you get into the networking side of things, it just blow your mind. But
yeah, it's a whole other world, I would assume.
Yeah.
All right, Felix. Felix wants to know if someone would like to intern with ACS, how would they go about doing that?
We have interns all the time. I don't hire them.
You don't directly hire them, but ACS does have them.
Interns, especially during the summer. If you're in the Florence area and you need an internship, highly look out. Even reach out to me if you want. I can try to help smooth you along if you need be. And a lot of our interns get hired later on, so it's a good foot in the door. We actually just hired one as one of our endpoint guys. He graduated, so one of our endpoint guys, one of the IT guys that you get on the phone and they run around and fix your computer, he actually just moved to a developer. So we have the flexibility to move around. I would say check our webpage. I think down at the bottom is careers, and I want to say internship is on there, but I am sorry I have not looked.
Yeah, I think you're right. I haven't looked lately, but I know in the past there's been just kind of an open rolling internship application. And I think you guys have some interns in Greenville as well, a couple.
Yeah, I think one just started actually in Greenville.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Someone just started in Greenville. I want to say it was an intern.
Yeah, well, and ACS, I know you can't speak to all things about internships, but because you've had a pretty nice pipeline of students who've been studying computer science, like at Francis Marion, sort of like you did, know about ACS, and y'all have had a great relationship there. But ACS, still needs developers, as many of our companies here do, and so ACS even has become more and more open to talking to folks who maybe didn't go through kind of a traditional educational path and, have either taught themselves or went to a boot camp or are kind of learning in different ways.
Right. And I mean, I would always, if you're interested, go out there. I mean, we pull from all over the state. Interns are on site. So, I mean, we had one guy lived in Columbia, and he actually commuted. Only a requirement. Did I lose you? Okay, you're back. You froze up for a second there.
Yeah. I think we had a little hiccup, but I think we're all right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think really the only requirement is that you can come to the office. So definitely check out the website. I'm sorry, I can't. I've interviewed with some of the interns, but I'm not a manager, so I don't have a whole lot to say on those decisions. So.
Awesome. Scott is rolling in with a lot of questions today. Keep them coming. He says 5 years ago, cloud computing barely existed. What technologies have you heard about that might be popular in the next 5 years? Great question.
Oh, Lord, you're going to see how much I read lately. Well, honestly, I read cloud computing. I think it's just going to get stronger. You're going to get a lot more into machine learning. And I know you see the Amazon stuff. With the cloud computing is you're going to find a whole lot of new things. Analytics, I think, is going to blow up. I mean, it's already huge, and you don't see a whole lot of it. The companies run on numbers. I think the technology to do that, you'll have the big guys like Tableau and stuff that can bring this data to the forefront, but you're going to have a bunch of the holistic computer learning stuff that's going to try to project data is going to be amazingly huge in the next couple of years. I'm actually trying to get into a little bit of that. Amazon has a neat little, if y'all are ever interested, they have a program called Deep Racer, and you actually teach a car how to drive on a track. And it sounds kind of silly, but the stuff that you get to do, and you have to teach it. So it's kind of leading into trying to teach machines to think. I'm not going to say the two-letter word that everybody runs away from. But machine learning is going to be huge. Cloud computing is not going to go anywhere. We're seeing people work from home. I think the technology to do that is going to explode. I just read an article, they finally released 6G, I think. So bandwidths are going to start getting bigger. Google's putting a new project out to try to get rid of VPN. So you're going to see all these new technologies that assist people to work outside of an office is also going to get huge. So telecommunications, I think, is going to explode here soon.
Yep, all really good points. We do have a question. I don't know if you can answer this or not, Patrick, but about whether anyone is coding or developing at or near Shaw. He says he lives on base, but it's hard to meet others who do this, as a lot of the meetings are held in Columbia or Florence. You know anything about stuff going on at Shaw?
Not off the top of my head. You're welcome to come to Florence anytime. Actually, our security director lives over by Shaw Air Force Base. So I know he commutes, and I've been over there a couple times. I do not know anybody in the immediate area, I'm afraid. I can reach out to, like I said, our security guy. He lives out that way. I could reach out to him. If you want to reach out to me later and remind me.
Yeah, I would also recommend joining our Slack channel. And I think I asked this last week, so I'll ask again. Kim, if you don't mind grabbing the link to our Slack channel and throwing that in the comment section here for those of you who have not joined yet. That is really a great way to connect with people who might either live or work kind of nearby. It's also, a great place to meet others who are learning around the state and our mentors who are all around the state. So if you've got really questions about anything you're working on, you can go there. Felix is also at Shaw, so that helps. You guys are helping each other just in the comment section. So that's awesome.
More. We'll start a class down there.
Yeah, there you go.
We can actually leave our homes.
We'll do an SC Codesman meetup there, so that'll be awesome. See, this is cool stuff just happening while we're chatting. Sweet. So Scott also asked, he said, you mentioned Google's Go programming language. Is that a language that a beginner can or should learn? And can you talk a little bit about how it might be different from some of the other languages? I know you mentioned some of the differences with like C and Go, but can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I have to try to say this. I love Go. It's a very compact language. It doesn't, like I said earlier, it doesn't have a whole lot of overhead, but it does that also by, it doesn't come built in with a lot of things. Like C Sharp, I can go and just start typing and it just automatically starts throwing everything in that I suddenly decide I need into the program. And that's kind of where C Sharp starts getting really bloated because it just starts throwing the kitchen sink at you, saying, oh, you want to do that, do this, you want to do that. Okay, here you go. And it really helps you through it. Go, on the other hand, it's actually closer to C if you've ever used it. Maybe C++. I won't argue either way. So it's actually, programming languages kind of have a layer to them. Someone will say this is like a high level programming language, and Go's more of a lower level than say C is because it doesn't do a lot of things out of the box that a lot of people might be used to if you're coming from a C Sharp. So, and a lot of stuff, but it is open source. So a lot of things that you're trying to do, you may have to go out and Google, and someone may have a package that you install. So Go works on more of a, what do they call that? Modules. Sorry, I have to think of the word. So you load modules as you need them. By base, it comes with a decent amount, but it's not not like you would expect C Sharp. So, I mean, literally to print something out to a console, to do a hello world program, I have to bring a module in to do that. I mean, it just doesn't do that by itself. But by declaring each individual module that you need in the project, it becomes a very compact and small application. So it can do a lot without a lot of power. To give an example, I've got a website and basically two APIs running on a box that has one processor and 2 gigs of RAM. And it's really never gotten above 10%. And it gets like 20,000 requests in an hour. So it's not like it's making thousands of database requests. But on that tiny little computer, it never really gets stressed out because Go is super efficient. I'm not going to say it's a hard language to learn. Just be ready to look a lot of stuff up. And a lot of stuff out of the box might just not be there. And you may have to go hunt them down because even I'll be like, I got to do this. It's not in there. I have to go Google it. And someone's probably written a package. You just got to find it. Mm-hmm. And almost all of it's out on GitHub. So once you find it, and they make it really easy to bring modules in. So I'm not saying that's complicated. It's just you got to go out and get it every time you want to do something.
Yeah. Good advice. I will wait for just a second to see if any other comments or questions come through. For those who are watching, you may or may not notice that there's a little tiny delay between when you write something and when we see it. So I'll give it just a minute to see if there are any last questions that may come through for Patrick. Patrick, it's been really great to have you on. It's always refreshing to kind of hear what real programming things are happening in South Carolina. It's not always the California, New York, big tech companies that we hear about in the news, but there's some pretty cool things happening right here in our own backyard, which is awesome.
Well, thanks for having me. Let me talk too much. So.
And Patrick has 2 boys, and are they learning to code yet?
Aiden, I've got 2, Liam and Aiden. Liam is 6. He's a little sucked into Minecraft right now, so not so much. Aiden actually has started playing. I've got him on some of the like coding little games that they can play. He really enjoys those. So they're more like little logic puzzles. One day I showed him how to write a program to turn on and off my smart bulbs. He didn't seem terribly impressed, but
8 and 6 is a difficult age. So
Yeah.
Well, y'all are, again, always welcome to join us on Mondays at 7. We'll be back next week. You're welcome to connect with us on Slack, also just on the SC Codes platform. Patrick, are there any other ways that folks can connect with you if they've got follow-ups?
Slack channel.
That's the best way?
Probably the best way. No
Okay.
offense, I don't want to hand out my cell phone number. So
Probably
if you
not.
really need it, sure, reach out.
Yeah, reach out on Slack.
Slack's really the best way to communicate. I've got it on my phone, so I pay attention. If you're on Discord, I'm on Discord too. So if anybody wants to hit me up through that.
One last question that came through from Darren.
Go ahead.
Asking about is C or C++ or C# procedural or object languages?
I'm going to say I'm pretty certain they're object oriented. I don't know about C. C++ and C# I know are considered object oriented programming languages. I really don't know about C. I have not messed with that in years. So I actually started out with C++, so C was in a little before me.
How many programming languages do you think you know, Patrick?
Does web count?
I think it all counts.
I'll just say web because there's a whole bunch of smattering of things, but really C++, VB.NET I use, and Go were my primaries. I could probably fake my way through Java if I had to, as long as I had a good internet connection with Google.
All right.
A lot of those programmers is like I said, once you get into one, you could probably get your way slowly through some other ones. Go's a little tricky. That one's just a little different. But personally, I love Go. So
yeah,
like efficiency. So I'm actually still trying to break the rest of my team into using Go because they're a bunch of .NET junkies. So I love them, but everybody has preferences. So.
All right, y'all, thank you so much for joining us tonight, for being here. We love being able to answer your questions live and chat with you. I did throw the link to our Slack channel in the comments, so grab that really quick and join us there. We can always continue the conversation. You can connect with us, connect with Patrick, ask a question anytime. So really appreciate Patrick for being here. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And we do look forward to being back again next week. Thank y'all.